being here today. Appreciate everybody here who's here early. We're thrilled today to have you here in the room with us as we dive into exploring some of the key trends that are impacting the print industry, brought to life by this unique collaboration of MindFire, Infigo, and GPA, which you should be able to see on the screen right now. And what we're going to do today is we're going to explore what each of these three companies is seeing at the forefront of the market, whether that be Jess and GPA, who are looking at the world through the eyes of specialty substrates that drive engagement for consumers, or Chris and Infigo, where they've got a web-to-print software that makes life easier for you while driving revenue, or from my side here at MindFire, the observations that we have around the world of data-driven direct mail marketing as things are increasingly headed to a digital and an AI-first world. So we're going to be bringing you observations from that as well. Today is a conversation that I get to moderate with Chris and Jessica, who I'm going to introduce to you now. So if you look at the screen, I'm going to go from left to right here. So Jessica is the Director of Marketing Communications and E-commerce for GPA. Because she is an enthusiastic and passionate advocate for the industry, if you know her, you know exactly what I mean here. She sits on the D-Scoop Partner Advisory Council and is a member of the United Nations Global Compact. Now, a fun fact about Jess, folks, listen up. She runs really fast, so she says, and she's fiercely competitive, which I know is true. In fact, Jess, you told me you broke a school record a long time ago, right? It's been a little while. And I know that she occasionally likes to challenge her colleagues to foot races, whether that's in a parking lot or at a convention. So if you think you can take Jess in a foot race, she's going to be at D-Scoop really soon. Tell me in the chat if you want to take her on, and I want to definitely put her up to that. I want to see if she's right about her ability to run there. A little bit about GPA as you get competitive here with Jess. GPA is part of the Federgoni Group, which enables them to offer a wide selection of products that support digital offset, flexo press technologies, and they are an Alliance One media partner of HP Indigo. So Jess, are you ready to race some folks?
I already have my running shoes packed, Dave. They're ready. They're ready. I'm ready to go. I'm so excited to be there. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I see Marianne is ready. Oh no, she says, I know better than to challenge Jessica to a run. Wow. Okay. I know there's got to be somebody
who has like a foot on me. So she's much taller. Her stride is much longer than mine.
Yes. All right. Next up in the middle here is Chris, who is the head of global marketing for Infigo. Chris is passionate about marketing technology, and he is a council member of IPIA, that's the Independent Print Industries Association, and has over a decade of experience in print and marketing. He's bringing a blend of corporate and agency marketing knowledge to the conversation today, and that's what he brings to Infigo and the clients that he serves there. Now, not to be outdone by Jess, he told me that he's an accomplished athlete, and he competed internationally in track and field. So Jess, Chris, I think there's an opportunity for some competition there. And he created a women's soccer club in 2019 that has 9 teams on the roster now. So Chris, you two make me feel super unqualified for today's conversation from an athletic point of view, but I'm ready to rock. How are you this morning?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Good evening from the UK. You may tell that I'm from the other side of the pond. Thanks for having me. First of all, really excited to be collaborating with you two gurus in the industry. I'd just like to point out as well that I'm retired, and to bring me out of retirement, it will cost a few dollars. And Jess, I really recommend that you also say you're retired as well, or unless you want to get paid to race.
We'll see what happens, Chris. We'll see what happens.
We'll see. So Lita in the chat, everyone, is dropping Jessica's LinkedIn as well as Chris's here so that you can connect with them. I think you're going to want to stay connected with them, especially as we head into more conversations like this one, which we'll be hosting. So lastly, and certainly least, I think here, I am Dave Rosendahl. And in addition to serving as the moderator today, I serve as president here at MindFire. And MindFire is a company that I know many of you are familiar with, but in case you're not, we're focused on helping print service providers, specifically organizations that are looking to transform into data-driven direct mail experts. And we do that through a white label, omni-channel marketing solution that puts direct mail front and center, really important, and does that by supporting it with a variety of digital channels, data, analytics, personalization, and more. So I don't have an athletic background like Jess or Chris. I spent my youth as a pianist, classical pianist. So while they were out running and doing other sports things, I was memorizing concertos and sonatas. So a little bit about me. I was also homeschooled, which many of my friends say to me, well, that explains a lot. Still don't know what they mean by that, but I'll take it. So now you know a little bit about us, both professionally and personally. And what I want to do is jump right in now to the material. And because I was picked as the moderator today, I had an opportunity to go through hundreds and hundreds of questions that you all submitted in advance of the event today. And because I'm the moderator, I get to decide how to run the show. So if you've been with me in other events like this one, you know that we like to do things a little bit differently. And what I mean by that is that I want you to talk back to us. I want you to open up the chat, find chat, little icon there in Zoom, and I want you to give us feedback. I want you to engage. I want you to ask questions. Heck, heckle me. You can do whatever you want there in the chat because this is a conversation, and the more you lean in, the better our time will be together. So here's my first ask of all of you. Can you do that? Can you lean into the conversation today? Drop a yes in the chat if you can. Who's going to be first to drop a yes in the chat? If you can lean. Okay, Francesca. Awesome. Francesca, thank you. Mark, Jules. Hey, Jules. Allegra says yes. Eli says yes. Allegra, I like the exclamation mark there. Taylor says yes. Lita says yes. John Hayes. Interesting. I grew up with a John Hayes. Jack says yes. All right, folks, thank you. This is going to be an interactive conversation. And as I said, I want your participation in this. Now, Jess and Chris, before we get to some of the more difficult questions that came in from the incredible audience that we have here today, one of the most common things I saw as I looked across the registration was a question like, how the heck do all three of these companies tie together? MindFire, Infigo, and GPA. For example, I saw M. Styles asked, how do businesses integrate these three companies to maximize customer engagement and drive revenue? So that is a fair question because it's a little odd to see us three working together. But what do you think? So how do GPA, Infigo, and MindFire intersect? Jess, I'm going to go to you first. What's your view on that?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I mean, when you think about providing a holistic solution, we can't look at things in a silo. It's this group. And obviously combined with our OEM partners, right, that creates the experience print providers and brands, what they're seeking. And each step in that process that we help support one another in helps elevate the business's strategy and it helps expand their growth potential.
So growth, we're all kind of focused on growth. I hear that from you. What about Chris? What's your perspective on how the three companies here are coming together?
Okay, so we predominantly have been focusing on being at the front of the workflow. So web to print first, then pushing the job file upstream. What we're hearing right now is that people are wanting to grow, they're wanting to scale up, right? So how do they do that? They've got their web to print system, or they're going to invest in a web to print system. So we've got to drive more traffic through to the web to print system. So that's where MindFire come in, right? MindFire will help drive that volume of customers for our customer into the workflow. But then we've always focused as a tech company on web to print into MIS or the other forms of the workflow, but we've never looked at the finished product that comes off the press. And this is where Jess comes in. So as we know, as we head towards D-Scoop, we're going to be looking at the HP kit, and we're going to be looking at what they're going to be demonstrating ahead of Drupal. So now what can we put on that press as well after we've driven the job through? What's going to come off? What's the finish like? What's the substrate like? So that's how it comes in, Dave. It's a slightly different approach to what we normally do, but we're now looking one step that side, another step that side.
That makes sense. Jess, one of the things that came in quite a bit was also around sustainability, which I know is a topic that you've spoken on and that GPA is passionate about. I think that before we get into the nitty-gritty questions around sustainability, it's probably good for you to define, what do you mean by that? How do you define sustainability? So we kind of level set on the definition of that term.
Yeah, that's a really great question, Dave. And I'd like to start by sharing that I've said this in countless presentations surrounding ESG and sustainability, some of which you've been a part of. We've had a lot of collaborations in the last couple of years surrounding this topic. It's not a trend, it's an insight, right? It's something that's not going away. It's here and it's growing in demand way and much more rapidly than we realize. But to answer your question, sustainability is about more than just your recycled paper, right? It's about the three pillars of ESG, which is environment, it's social, it's government. It's climate action, but it's also aiming for reduced inequalities and even promoting health and well-being. That yoga class that D-Scoop's hosting one of the mornings is an example of. Maximizing time and efficiency to create a more effective workflow, leveraging industry and innovation and infrastructures. Essentially, I mean, really doing the right thing by the planet, but also your people. I mean, that's really sustainability in a nutshell.
Chris, I think everyone knows what web to print is, as we're level setting kind of on the definitions for today before we get into the big questions here. But I'm curious, from your perspective, how does Infigo see web to print that maybe stands in contrast to how others look at it?
I think we look at it slightly differently now. The last 2 or 3 years, we've really invested time in our partners, in our integrations. Our APIs are second to none. And the reason we've done that is there's no point investing in the software and really trying to drive those orders onto the press if you haven't got the next stages and the right partners to follow on, because that's where you get the real ROI, when you've got a seamless workflow. So we see it slightly differently. We see that, yes, you can buy our product, but our product's more powerful if you buy it with in collection of other partners. And we hear it all the time on the customer case studies. Customers say, we bought this and it made sense to buy this because of you guys. And then when we bought the three of you together, we've managed to save so much money. We've made so much money. We've been able to sell more. So we take a step back, Dave, and we look at what does the factory floor, but that's what we call it in England anyway. What does the factory floor need to look like in order to make lights out automation?
Makes sense.
But
Makes
Dave,
total sense. Yeah.
I've got to ask you a question though, because you're asking all the questions right now. So let's fire one at you. What sort of transformations have you seen in the last 18 months, and what's changed in MindFire?
Well, that is a good question. I have my little handy prop right here. Everyone in the chat, tell me, what are you seeing right here? What is this? What is this that you're seeing right here?
A trash can.
A box of chocolates.
I would say, to answer your question, Chris, with postage going up and more direct mail budget being pushed over to digital, or digital advertising taking more and more of the direct mail budget, every piece that gets put into this box has to work harder, especially over the last 18 months. Anybody agree? Give me a yes in the chat if that resonates. Every piece of direct mail that the printers that are here are putting into that box for their customers, the brands, has got to work harder. And so over the last 18 months, what I would say that we've seen is a new realization, or a reawakening of realizing that in order to get direct mail to work effectively, you've got to be data driven, and you need to be involving the digital channels to create kind of a support mechanism that makes direct mail work better. But that's not easy to do. There are challenges in that, and ultimately that's why we exist as a company. But that's kind of what I've seen over the last 18 months. Certainly, I think you all know, at least here in the United States, postage rates, man, have gone up tremendously. And, it's hard to do direct mail the way it used to be done. It requires a new discipline. So that's what I've seen by and large over the last 18 months or so. So I appreciate you firing that question at me, Chris. But now I'm going to turn it back on you, man, right? So we've got a number of questions, folks. If you look at the screen here, in 3 areas. When I looked at all the questions that came in, they were kind of in 3 general categories. Questions around personalized customer experience, secondly, data-driven marketing, and then third, sustainability. So we're going to take as many questions as we can in each of these sections. And if Chris or Jess or I say something that you want to know more about, please put it in the chat. Lita, who's on the team here, is going to be taking that and preparing it for us, because we're going to have real-time Q&A here as we get towards the middle to end of the presentation today. So, Chris, I'm going to start with you here. As we think about personalizing the customer experience, from your perspective in web to print, what kinds of products can be personalized? I saw folks asking questions. Frankly, it was a little surprising to me that people are still wondering this, but what kind of products can be personalized from a web to print perspective?
First of all, Dave, if you could just share one of the slides. I've got the traditional ones. Thank you very much. So this is what we see traditionally: packaging, labels, textiles, commercial print, direct mail. As Dave mentions, direct mail is back in a big way, and that's fantastic news. Wide format, promotional. But I think there's a very fine line between personalized and customized. Okay, so for example, if it's just a load of names coming off of a spreadsheet, that's more customized. But what we're seeing, a trend that's growing in North America, especially in a post-COVID world, is in packaging, in labels. There's a lot more startup businesses now. People are starting a second revenue, and they're creating like pet food companies, for example. Now, they're offering their customers the ability to drag and drop a photo and image onto the packaging for their pet food. So if any of you have cats or dogs, you could receive your special pet food, whatever it may be, with a picture of your cat or your dog on there. So there's a very broad spectrum now, Dave, to answer the question in terms of what can be personalized. You can see on the screen there's a suitcase. If you think again to something like a suitcase, you think, oh, okay, I can put whatever I want on the suitcase. But there's a mindset shift in real estate, advertising real estate. Things that move through places now are basically advertising billboards. And people really can now personalize literally anything as long as you can get the file onto the press to create the output.
Interesting. Chris, before I forget, in addition to folks asking the question about what can be personalized, I saw a few questions coming in around, how long does it take to create a web to print website that would enable that kind of personalization? And then a set of related questions around the skill sets that are required to actually do that. Do you need to be a web developer? Do you need to know code? That kind of stuff. So briefly, just give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so last year we hear this a lot, Dave, or we heard it a lot over the last couple of years. And last year at Printer United in Vegas, we brought with us an updated stack to our platform. And the whole premise behind it was not only could PSPs spin up a storefront very quickly, but they wouldn't necessarily need to be able to understand HTML or CSS or be a developer. They pretty much could work WordPress or Facebook, for example, and they could spin up a storefront. And we actually were very fortunate to have an acid test in the sense of the Printing United, the NAPCO team came by the stand and said, okay, prove it, do it for us now. So we spun up a storefront. We took their image off the website. We made a couple of products. And it was our CTO at the time, Michael Zorner from Germany, who was with us. And he spun the site up in 6 minutes and literally free typed all the information. So what we're seeing now is that we've given the tools to the printer to be able to not only create the storefront, but they can then sell that storefront to their customer. And then that has a double-edged sword in the sense that it keeps the customer feeling sticky, feeling privileged, and a bit of a VIP service. So to answer the question in short, a matter of minutes, probably on average 10 minutes. And no, it's drag and drop and free type, so you don't need to be a developer.
And one of the other how-to questions that I saw from the attendees as they came in was around how does one get the print jobs or the print files from the web to print site onto their Indigo? Folks are still curious about that process. So briefly, how does that work?
Okay, so we have a native integration with HP. So we're actually able to put the job straight onto a HP press, which is something that is nothing short of amazing. If you're going to invest in millions of dollars in a press, the first thing that should go through your mind before purchasing that press is, how am I going to keep that press running? That press needs jobs. So web to print system is the best part of that thought process. Web to print, Indigo press. But the other thing with the Infigo developers is they've taken the same mindset and they have something called the Connect Flow or the Connect modules. It's a series of modules that allow us to put those jobs onto many other presses as well. So we take that mindset of our customers going to invest in that hardware, that equipment, and we're going to help them by increasing the jobs onto that investment. Therefore, we keep that press running at all times. So in short, we have a native integration into the HP stream.
Makes sense. Folks, audience, if you have a question for Chris around specifically what he just said there around the web to print or specifically the Infigo functionality, don't hesitate. Drop that in the chat. Jess, you ready? I'm coming over to you with a question. Ready?
Let's do it.
All right. From your perspective, your vantage point inside of GPA, I want to know something that's surprising you about how brands are using substrates to personalize the customer experience. What's an observation you've made that's surprising?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's surprising, but we all know how excited we get when we get something in the mail that's personalized for us. And I think what we're seeing brands leverage is these specialty papers to create that unique and elevated experience, something special, things that are tactile and tell a story. I sent you some imagery, if you don't mind popping that up. So you're right, embellishments, using creative color choices and inks. As part of the Fedrigoni Group, we have access to some of the most beautiful and innovative papers in the world, truly. I mean, they're gorgeous. And when you receive something like that, and if you're anything like me, you're keeping that and you're showing it to others because it's too nice to put into the garbage. So this right here is our pearl cover. We have a pearl cover on the outside and the inside, but it's using silver inks and gold inks. It's using embellishments like foil, things like that. Scodex, we're partnered with Scodex, things like that. Really just kind of elevate that experience for the customer. Coupled with that personalization is what brands are seeking. They're looking for that emotion.
That makes sense, Jess. Thank you.
Yeah.
If you have questions for Jess about what she's seeing, let us know in the chat. Go ahead, Jess.
But Dave, yeah, I don't think that you are going to get away with the only one asking questions here today. I know this is really fun for you, but what are you seeing at MindFire as it pertains to personalized customer experience? I mean, you guys deal with this stuff every day. What are you seeing?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, everything that we do at MindFire is about using data to personalize the marketing campaign, putting direct mail kind of front and center, as I said earlier. And I think that if I take a step back and look at kind of the history of how the industry has transformed over the last few years, the challenge for most printers historically has been that they've focused on print production and print execution. And I'm talking specifically about from the direct mail angle. And so figuring out, how to add data, creative strategy, multi-channel media around the direct mail piece is tough. It's new. It's different. It's not for everyone. It's not a strategy that every print company has embraced, but that's why MindFire exists, to help companies through that transformation. So I think, to answer your question directly, I'll be honest. I think that VDP and personalization has been around for a long time as it relates to direct mail, as long as I've been around in the industry, for sure. But my observation is that really only now is it starting to take hold in a way where the true promise of variable data print from a direct mail perspective is taking hold for the brands that are using it, for the printers who are producing it. And there's still a lot of room for improvement around the innovation for folks who are willing to embrace the omni-channel perspective, using those data-driven insights to coordinate messaging and drive that seamlessly across not only the direct mail, but also email, SMS, ringless voicemail, landing pages, and so on. So Jess, does that answer your question?
I think so. It sounds like there are so many more options to explore, but can I throw one more at you?
Yeah, throw it.
All right. So Paul McCarthy, our friend from HP. Hi, Paul, if you're out there. He asked the question in advance: how can companies provide an omni-channel experience?
That's good. I'll bring up the data-driven marketing bookend here, because I think that fits well into this section here. So Paul's asking, how can companies provide an omni-channel experience? Is that the question?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. What I've seen is that there are numerous ways for companies to do that, but it can be overwhelming or challenging to try to do all of it at once. So I would suggest that companies look at it, and specifically I'm looking at it through the eyes of a printer who might be here in the audience, that while there's a lot that you can do from the omni-channel perspective that can drive meaningful results for your customers, our advice would be to kind of take a crawl, walk, run, fly approach to that, meaning start small, learn some of the basics, because remember, it's going to take your sales team learning how to sell this. It's going to take organizational wherewithal that in some cases folks don't have yet. So start small, crawl, walk, run, fly, take that kind of approach, find a good partner to help you. Obviously, we'd be happy to help anybody here. But that's how I would address Paul's question: is start small and begin to layer on that knowledge, layer on the abilities, and take it from there. Yeah. Chris, do you have anything to add to that, to Paul's question?
Not to Paul's question, but I'm going to throw another question at you. I've just seen from Stephen England. Given that you see the world through multiple channels, print being one of those.
Yeah.
What communication channels are realizing the highest responses relative to revenue growth? I think that's really apt for this conversation, actually. So
Yeah,
what communication
that's
channels are you realizing for the highest responses relative to revenue growth?
yeah, that's a good question, and I hate to give this answer because it sounds like I'm wiggling out of the question there, but it depends. Was that Stephen England you said? I know Stephen.
Yeah,
Steve
Stephen England. Yeah.
All right. Hey, Steve. I hope you're here. That's a good question, folks, but it really depends. And that's why you need from our perspective, a data-driven approach to measuring the effectiveness of the direct mail. If you're a direct mail printer here, the effectiveness of the direct mail that you're doing for clients. Historically, for many organizations, for many print companies, they're not in that loop. They're not aware of the attribution and the results back to the direct mail piece. Maybe your customer keeps that close to the vest, or if you're only looking at the world through the print production eyes, which is certainly a very viable strategy, well, then you're disconnected from that. So I would say that it depends. What we see is certainly direct mail for the right industries is very, very effective. But so is email, so is text messaging, so is ringless voicemail. There's all sorts of new innovations that we're seeing digitally that help engage consumers. So it depends is the answer, but you need to measure it in order to understand what's going to work for the specific use case. Jess, what about you? Anything to add to Steve's question there?
I don't know that I do. I think you covered it. I think you covered it pretty well. I think that we have such a multi-generational industry that I think that different methods work for different groups of people. I mean, we see that here at GPA. I mean, there's such a wide span of our customer base in terms of age, demographic, location, preferences. So no, I thought that was great. But Dave, we've done a few events together where you've spoken on the impact of AI on print. And a question that came in from Danielle Wright Landry of WUSF Public Media has a question about AI. She asks, how can we use AI to predict and customize the best times to market to our customers or donor at what threshold? Goodness, I have my words.
Yeah, that's a big question, and that's a really important one. I think that, again, this is just my view, folks. AI, if you think it's a fad or if you think it's a trend, I would caution you against that. I think that it's likely probably the most important thing that's happened to us since maybe electricity. It's at that level, of how it's changing business and how it's changing life. And so I think that using AI to really leverage for the first time the ability that we have as marketers to speak directly to individuals at the individual level at scale. So I know that she was asking about how do we customize communication and how do we do it at the right time. Machine learning and AI and what's available now to most of us, most organizations, is incredible in terms of its ability to start to get us to that promised land. It's always been the dream, right? To have one-to-one marketing that's individual to each person in print and on the web and so on. But historically, what I've seen is that folks, segment their audiences and they speak to folks in different buckets. Well, now with AI, you can customize that messaging further. If this isn't making sense, folks, if you have questions, please let us know. I'm happy to kind of walk you through that even offline. But that's how I would start to answer that question, is that now it's possible, and it would take a lot more time to kind of go into the nitty-gritty details, but I'd be happy to with anybody that has a question around that. Does that help, Jess?
Great.
All right. So let's do sustainability. Thanks for firing these questions at me, guys. I wasn't expecting you to come back at me. This is my job to ask the questions, okay? But I'm going to throw one back at you, Jess, now in sustainability. So there were a number of questions that came in around this. And one of the most common ones was around this idea that sustainability efforts seem or are expensive and time consuming. And folks are wondering, is it worth pursuing? Is it worth doing when I don't have the resources? How do you answer that?
I think what I'd say to folks who feel intimidated by sustainability efforts is that you're probably already doing things that are in line with those sustainability efforts. Dave, I think you have a graphic, if you don't mind popping it up on the screen. Okay, this right here is the United Nations compiled 17 global goals that they set forth in 2015. And the basis for which all sustainability efforts are measured globally. Take a look. Okay. There's Life Below Water. That's a recycling program in your business. All of you have a recycling bin in your office, I'm sure. Life on Land. That's utilizing sustainable products, papers, substrates that have those components, those ESG components. Gender equality, one of my favorite. That's having women in leadership positions like Marianne Gears, right? Expanding opportunities. These
Yep.
are all things you already probably have in practice. So when you start engaging with accrediting bodies like SGP, which is Sustainable Green Printing, or EcoVadis, which is a larger, more global, you already have these initiatives to stand on. And I'd say that you can't afford not to pursue efforts towards sustainability, Dave. Brands and end users are requiring these in order to even do business with them. I mean, we have requests on a weekly basis from brands and end users that are asking us to provide documentation, to fill out forms that outline what our practices are and our initiatives. And I'd say if you want to continue to have those opportunities, you have to figure out some way to be engaged in some capacity.
Interesting. Thank you, Jess. And if you want a copy of this graphic, Jess, I know we're going to make the materials available afterwards. Just let us know there in the chat if you'd like a copy of that. Jess, following more on this theme of sustainability, there were questions that came in around, the latest trends and insights around sustainability that you're seeing from brands as they try to leverage sustainability to drive new revenues. In fact, Craig from Sheer Print Solutions asked around, your opinions of where the industry is headed with regards to sustainability. So what are you seeing? What trends are you seeing? And where do you think things are headed?
Yeah, I think the industry is already embracing sustainability. I mean, I think they're truly wrapping their arms around it. I think there are a lot of people who still don't understand part of it and what it is. Again, I'm super happy to take this offline, guys. If you want more information, if you want a deep dive on sustainability, this is like, I love this stuff. But think about just the past couple of years. Think about the conferences we're going to, the trade shows, the industry events. D-Scoop they have a sustainability board themselves. There are so many that either revolve around sustainability or have components that feature it. And we as an industry, I mean, we're recognizing that the brands and the end users, like I mentioned before, are requiring these qualifications. But we also are recognizing the importance of what it really is. We're seeing more printers applying for accreditations and certifications. I mentioned the SGP earlier. I can send you guys some more information about what that is, but it's a certification in our industry that's very widely recognized and one that's more easily obtainable than your larger global EcoVadis type certifications. And I think that one of the advantages that we have as GPA and part of the Fed-Dragoni group is that what trends and insights there are in Europe and how they're migrating here to the US, because they are far ahead of where we are right now. I mean, like in terms of sustainability efforts, they are like light years ahead of us. But what we have is the distinct advantage of studying what those are and then sharing those and disseminating those down to our industry here in the States, because we truly are not as far advanced as our European friends. Chris, I mean, you're across the pond. What are you seeing? What trends are you, and how are you guys at Infigo implementing those practices?
Okay, I'll give you three major ones we've seen probably in the last 2 years. First of all, we're seeing that the print shop now has to have a sustainability campaign accreditation, because they will lose business to their competitors if they're not seen to be, with that campaign in place, with that broader thinking of the environment. But also, and you mentioned this earlier, Jess, as well, it's the people as well as becoming something that's very, very important for sustainability. We think very much about the green initiatives and the earth and the environment, but actually the people and cost of living and standard of life and mental health. These are all things now that are part of sustainability as well. And Figo, what we've been very lucky to trial a 4-day week. And that was off the back of a year's experiment on mental health and making sure that we get a better standard of work, but also a better standard of sort of living and balance with our lives. And that's proven to be very, very fruitful. That was a successful experiment. We took part in a year with some other European companies as well. And the whole premise around that was work smarter and work by numbers that matter, but not work for the sake of working. So it changes your whole outlook on everything. And then it gives you that extra day to do something that maybe you don't get in the week. So let's say in my case, it's with spending time with my daughters, which is time I'll never get back. So exactly. But we're taking it a couple of steps further as well. We've been very fortunate to win Best Places to Work award in the UK, Best Place to Work in Tech. And then recently we won Women in Tech award as well, which is something that we all know is a massive issue in the
Who
tech
won that
space.
award, Chris?
The Women in Tech Award.
Okay. Yep.
Get it. That's amazing.
Yeah, so but to achieve all that, we had to put a HR department in place and have a proper open forum with our employees to feed back to our management, and our management have to be of the right mindset to welcome that feedback and then action it. So that's really important as well, and we've embraced that. But the biggest one for me personally, and as you said in my introduction at the beginning, I'm a bit of a MarTech geek. I get excited about technology. AI excites me. It doesn't scare me. Probably it should. We all grew up watching Terminator 2, but I'm excited. So can you just bring up the slide for me a minute, Dave? Our development team are amazing, and they are really innovative with their ideas. And what they wanted to do, and what we wanted to do as a business, was find a way where, as we keep building sites, keep building web to print platforms, we've got to offset that somehow with the earth. So we've come up with a system. Every time our customer creates a storefront, and as I said earlier, this can be a matter of minutes, so in theory a customer could create hundreds of storefronts in an hour. We plant a tree, one tree per storefront, and it's completely automated. And the idea is that the minute the customer logs into the control panel, starts creating their storefront, hits the live button, it sends a notification to our partner, who then says, one tree for Infigo, and they go off and plant it. So it's completely automated, because automation is the only way. But the main thing is we set this up so now we can empower our customers. We can take the likes of MindFire driving those jobs into the web to print system. We can keep creating those storefronts, and every time one's created, a tree will be planted. We're looking to have 600 planted by the end of this calendar year, but then we've also going to backfill as well. So it does leave you feeling very good about what you do. And ultimately, we know we're the first to do this in this space, and if we're gonna invest and believe in the print industry, then we've got to do our bit as well. So
I love that.
Chris, I want to go further into the mental health aspect and the 4-day work week, hopefully in Q&A. I just jotted that down. That is a fascinating angle that I hadn't considered on the sustainability side.
Okay.
But Jess, I know you have a few visuals that you also want to share. So talk us briefly through what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so I mean, right here, we talked about the packaging experience, right? Like what brand owners are chasing as an experience. There are the few visuals that I sent over. Those are up on screen. These are just a few of the what we see as hot items for packaging. Right here, this is something that we've created for an event experience when we go to trade shows and things like that. But it features our extra white, our cover. We've got the rose gold, which is this beautiful pearl rose colored paper, and ultra black on the bottom of that. But what this does is it creates that experience that we talked about, right? And the unboxing experience when it comes to packaging. This also, if you flip the slides forward, there's just a little bit more detail. And we talk about those ESG components, right? These are FSC certified, biodegradable and recyclable. These are all things that you're creating this incredible experience for your customers and your end users, but you're also, again, doing right by the planet and doing right in terms of sustainability efforts. This is a bright white linen, that tactile kind of gritty feel to that sheet. Again, just putting all that holistic approach to something when you have all of these elements that involve sustainability, ESG, personalized experience, unboxing, that super emotional connection to what you're doing.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Chris, I want to piggyback off of what Jess said around Europe leading the way, beyond where the U.S. is in terms of sustainability awareness and adoption.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that? And I know you just gave the example with the planting the trees, but do you see it the same way?
I do and I don't. I mean, I'm very fortunate to look at America in a very different way, outside of looking in. I see half of the nation very aligned with what we're doing, and I see the other half not so worried, or not really in a rush to make any change, which is troubling. But at the same time, education is the key. As Jess said, what we've got to do is share knowledge, and I think that's the best way that we can evolve as a human race. I'd say the US is more advanced in the software aspects. Some of the conversations I have with PSPs when I'm over, say, at Printing United or in D-Scoop, they get it quicker, they make that decision quicker, and they understand that the software can help with this issue of sustainability. But in terms of actually marketing it as a USP or using it as something to draw people in, I think the US does need to speed up a little bit there. It will become, as our generations change, as millennials now start to become the CEOs of businesses and the next generation's coming through, you know, their buying habits are going to be very different, and they're going to have an expectation of not only receiving their order like an Amazon delivery, but also they want to have a recycled packaging, or they want to go to a trade show and the stand should be made out of recycled cardboard. Like, this is going to be an expectation. We see that now in mainland Europe, but it's coming. It's definitely coming.
Yeah. Can I
What do you
piggyback
all
on
think of
that?
what-
Sorry, can I
Yeah, go
piggyback on
ahead.
that really quick? No, so there was a study put out, and I included it in a presentation not long ago, that Forbes put out that says millennials and Gen Z, that Gen Z generation, they're more willing to pay. They're willing to pay more for sustainable products and companies that are engaged in sustainable practices than the ones that are not, just because that's the next generation, and that is future state thinking. And if we want to continue to build our brands and continue to grow revenue, they are the future buyers. They're the current buyers, but they're also, like you said, Chris, the future. They're the CEOs now. They're the presidents of companies. There's the CMOs, and we really got to kind of take that into consideration when we're talking about strategy and planning.
Absolutely.
I want to know from the audience, just real quick, Chris, from the audience, as Chris is preparing for his next statement here, how is sustainability impacting you and your organizations and your clients? Take a moment, if you would, just think for a moment, and then drop that in the chat, because I want to include your voice in the conversation here. For example, Kurt just said you have to look at sustainability as an opportunity. And I think Jess and Chris, you would probably agree with that. So take a moment, folks, drop that in the chat. I want to hear what you're thinking right now. Chris, go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to say that the biggest thing we're seeing, really, the three most common materials are combustible packaging, recycled packaging, and corrugated packaging. And people want to, they were, like Jess said, they're going to spend more if they know that the it's got a green caveat around it. Or on the human side, maybe the labor source is also ethical as well. But this is going to be even bigger than we realize. We're seeing right now that in the UK, and I'm going to use the word soccer rather than football, just to make sure that we get it clear what I'm talking about.
We understand, yes.
Right, you got it. Right, we've got soccer jerseys now that are being made out of recycled plastic bottles. Right now, I've held these textiles, and you do not realise that they're made out of plastic. But the manufacturer can say 15 recycled drinks bottles have been used to make this garment. You imagine when that gets into the NFL or comes over to America or the NCAA, then we've got a real game changer in terms of sustainability. Someone's just put in the chat as well. I can't see who it is, but sustainability is an opportunity. It's a massive opportunity. But I think really it's also a case of we're in a situation now where we've got to educate everybody, because we've got to know what we don't know. And I think we're about 10, 20 years behind being something very special as an industry.
It's interesting. I see Erwin saying most, if not all, of our new customers are requesting significant information about our sustainability program and process. It's not just an opportunity. It's being driven by financials, growth, and potential revenue.
Yeah.
Kurt is saying the majority of the RFQs I'm working on have an equity and sustainability requirement. Plus, it has to be documented and measurable. Yep. Danielle says, I feel that many brands are stepping up with their strategic goals by 2025 or 2030 and are bringing visibility to this. Also, having a spec on sustainable product has been growing. Chris, I'm going to ask you a question, and I think you have a visual for this. A question that came in from Ed Smith from Doran and Ward Packaging. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Wondering, from your perspective, what is the top substrate that brand owners are chasing for their packaging? And I know we've been talking about sustainability, so I'm wondering if you have any insight on what you're seeing in that regard.
Yeah, so top three right now: combustible packaging, recycled packaging. So that can be anything from papers being reused or plastics, and then corrugated packaging. You'll see that corrugated packaging is mentioned twice there because I wanted to highlight the fact that trade show stands now or booths.
I thought that was a typo, Chris. I thought you were just really excited about corrugated packaging.
No, I wanted to give an example, actually. When we were in, I think it was FESPA last year, another European show, where it's a stand, not a booth, because it's in Europe. We actually saw big archways made out of cardboard, corrugated cardboard. And as you walked around this stand, it said, recycled. So not only had they made the stand out of cardboard, but they were going to flat pack it afterwards and then recycle it again. So they're the top three really. It's the corrugated cardboards, it's the recycled packaging that you see, the Amazon style packaging that we all know and love, and then things that we can put in the ground afterwards. Back in probably about 2017, 2018 in London, we saw a real trend for business cards with seeds. And basically you finish with a business card and you put it in a plant pot, you grow a plant out of it. I mean, it sounded crazy at first, but it really caught on for a while. And you can still get seeded paper now. So I think it's only going to grow. And something that you mentioned as well, David, when you were just going through one of the questions there, that major household names now have to have these policies. The great scenario we're in is they can't ignore it, because they will lose business and lose sales if they ignore it, because it's becoming a USP. So it's a win-win all round. You have to embrace it, because if you don't, you'll go bust.
Well, folks, I want to get to all of the real-time questions that have come in. So everything that we just kind of went through here for the first part of this presentation was the questions that you submitted in advance of today. But now I want to go to the ones that you're sending in right now based on what Chris, Jess, and I have talked about here. So in a moment, I'm going to go through a list of those and start to address them. If you have any other questions, please put those in the chat. But first, I want to ask you all a question. I'm asking the audience now a question as you're thinking about everything that we've talked about today. Please, in the chat, what's an insight or an aha moment that you had as you were listening to something that maybe I was talking about, or Chris or Jess? Take a moment and please put that in the chat. I want to read those off to everybody so that we have an opportunity to engage and understand what's working for you in this material as you're thinking about how to take your business to the next level. So the first question I'm going to throw at, I'll do for you, Chris and Jess, and then I'll answer it as well, is from Mark asking, how are marketers using things like QR codes to engage their customers and prospects? So Chris, over to you first on that. What are you seeing?
I mean, I think I first saw the QR code back in 2013, and people said it never clicked on. And then it kind of dropped, and now I see it absolutely everywhere. Like, I see it on digital signs, I see it on cars. I'm really excited by this, but I think so. Back to first of all, to answer the question, I see it everywhere, whether it's digital marketing formats or print. On substrates, as Jess is probably going to say in a second. But the thing is, I think the more the technology is growing and our iPhones and our Android systems are all improving, the more the QR code is going to be with us and be stronger. And yeah, I'm still blown away by the fact it was written off in early 2013s, 2014s, and here we are, 21, 22, and it is back everywhere.
Yeah, Jess, what are you seeing QR code wise?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about QR codes, I think when it first came back, the print industry kind of froze and we're like, oh my gosh, it's going to take away from print, right? And it did for a little while. When you went to restaurants, everything was a QR code. There were no printed menus. I still ask for a printed menu every time I go to a restaurant because I want to know what it is. But I think it's an incredible tool. We have to leverage our technology, right? And I think what it allows us to do is grab that data and be able to target market better. We talk about working smarter and not harder and more efficiently. And that's exactly what QR codes do. So, I mean, we use it in our direct mail pieces. We use it when we're doing, digital marketing campaigns and things like that. And it allows us to kind of streamline processes. So it's there. You're right though, Chris, it's so funny that it's back and everybody just loves it.
And we recently added it to the back of a koozie that we gave away at Label Expo. And the best thing about the QR code for me, and it touched on sustainability again, is if you get the right software that you're managing that QR endpoint, that the QR can stay the same. It can be printed once, it can be put somewhere, and you just keep changing the data that it's going to redirect it to. So it's sustainable as well, in the sense of you can save on repeating the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, from my perspective, Mark, to answer your question, I keep using my little prop here and this direct mail piece, and I'm sure you all seen, direct mail pieces now with QR codes. And the opportunity there is to use those QR codes and pass the personalized information or an identifier from that direct mail piece over to the landing page or the microsite or the website that is capturing response, and using that as, back to the attribution thing we were talking about earlier, using that to understand what's working in that direct mail campaign and using that information to make it a better experience for the respondent as they're engaging with that direct mail piece. I see Dave here, Melhado, in the audience said, just as an FYI, we've had tremendous success on behalf of our clients using PQRs. If you don't know what a PQR is, it's a personalized QR code. So it's what I was just describing a moment ago. It's a special kind of QR code for direct mail. And he says that it has fast become the #1 preferred response channel thanks to COVID. That's interesting. Thank you, Dave, for putting that in there. Let's see here. Next question from Kurt. And I'm going to address this one to you, Chris. I think this is at you here. I'm curious, to what extent privacy laws and sustainability have impacted printing on the other side of the pond? What's your response to Kurt on that?
Does he mean GDPR? Is that what he's referencing?
I mean, I think GDPR is one, but is there anything else that has impacted print on that side of the world?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, really, Kurt. I think the biggest thing I have to say that with sustainability and printing in general is the EU, or the European Union as they're known, they have directives and initiatives like what the UN numbers that Jess shared earlier, and they're pretty strong on that. So what it's forced everyone to be cleaner, to smarten up their act, to look at sustainability of the factory. How does it work? Do they have renewable energy? Are they using the right kind of inks? What they're doing with the waste? What substrates they're using? So it has impacted. There is regulation in Europe, and for some of you may know, the UK left Europe recently, so we're kind of between the two, but we try and follow our friends over on mainland Europe. But I think it's helped for the best, because it's forcing an industry to be very modern, very forward thinking, but also very sustainable, but looking at the 360. So I hope that answers your question. If you want to talk about
let us
data,
know if that helped there, if that gave you some insight. I see another comment from Erwin here saying it's great to see the collaboration of somewhat unique companies coming together with information, advice, and thoughts on helping and supporting the overall process of print production and distribution. And so I'll piggyback off of what you just said there, Erwin, to say that we want to continue this conversation. So we're going to have a series of these kinds of events where we bring together, as my kids would say, a collab between Jess, Dave, and Chris to riff on these topics and bring you what we're seeing on the leading edge from each of our respective point of views. So, Erwin, thank you for that encouragement. And for the rest of you, what other topics would you want us to go deeper into? Today, we kind of touched on 3 or 4 different major areas, those trends that we're talking about today. If there are topics you would like to hear more about from Chris or from Jess or from me, let us know in the chat there because we want to continue this conversation. And Jess, also, we can continue this conversation at D-Scoop, right? Where are we at D-Scoop? What booth numbers?
GPA is 1024. I'm so excited about this. We are all standing next to each other at our booths, Chris. 1, 2, 3. I think you guys are what, 1030? Either way,
1031.
1031. We're in L shape. We're in L shape right over in that little corner over there. I'm super pumped for that. We've got so many exciting things happening just in it's the 14th. It's in like 10 days, guys. In 10 days, we're all going to be together. If you are going, wear your sequins on Tuesday, guys. I know that these gentlemen here have something very exciting planned.
We're not done yet, folks. Don't leave yet. I want to make sure you have Jessica's information. I'm putting that up here on the screen. My team, if you can drop that in the chat, as well as Chris. Here's Chris's email and his fancy international phone number there. And here is mine. So my team's going to drop that in here into the chat, and we'll make sure to connect with you if you want to follow up on anything that we talked about today. I heard from Andrew here in the chat. He said, I'd love to hear more details on AI integration. So yeah, I think that would definitely be a meaningful topic for many of you here. So that's certainly one that we could do. Let's see. Another question here from Mark asking, will the slides be shared? And yes, we will absolutely share the slides. Drop your best email in the chat or a colleague's email if you want this sent to someone. We'll make sure you get the recording and the slides. So drop that in the chat and we'll make sure we get that over to you. Kurt, if you're still here, are you still here, Kurt? Yeah, you're here. Kurt made an observation saying it's challenging for printing companies to embrace multi-channel marketing. Yes, understood, Kurt. Yeah. There's often more revenue to be had besides the printing component. So I think, Kurt, are you saying that it's a challenge, but for the right organizations, they're realizing there's more revenue to be had? Let me know if I heard you correctly on that. Speaking of print and direct mail at DScoop, I'm not going to go into details here. I can't right now, but we do have something big that we're releasing and announcing at DScoop, something that we do require you to be under NDA to discuss with us. But if you're headed to DScoop, or even if you're not, and you want to understand how to transform your organization into a direct mail powerhouse, there is something big coming that we want to share with you. Let me know there in the chat or my team, and we'll make sure to set up time at DScoop or offline and give you some insight into that. So please don't miss out on the opportunity for that. I see a lot of folks agreeing with AI integration in print would be of interest. I see many asking for the recording. All right, please keep those questions coming. Here's a question from Eli. Jess, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Do it.
How do you foster buy-in internally with sales towards sustainability and AI?
Oh, okay. Sustainability, on the sustainability side of things. Okay. I think that, I think you have to share with them that, again, it's not a trend, it's an insight, and your print customers are working with end brands who are requiring this to be part of their practice. And so it is a selling point. And I think someone said earlier, it's an opportunity for you to expand business and education, right? I think by merely going in there and just educating people, just so that they understand, because I think obviously a lot of people think about the environmental part of it, but really kind of presenting like the holistic approach to ESG and sustainability will open their minds to kind of thinking about it differently. And so I think it's continuous education. The AI thing, I'm going to lob back at you.
Well, I'm gonna go to Chris first. Let's talk about your views on AI. How do you think folks can foster buy-in internally around AI? I know that you're also interested and passionate about it. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I think first of all, there's always a fear of something new, something that's unknown. It's a natural human reaction, and we sometimes get it with the marketing of our product. As a general web to print site, people be like, well, I can't get the customer to buy into it. First of all, we have to take out what it is and these buzzwords and look at what the solution is to our customer, or in your case, the PSP, the customer's customer, and then sell them or explain, the solution to the challenge. So first of all, AI is not going to take anyone's jobs. It's only going to help. It's a co-pilot. That's how I see it, first of all, and that's how we work with it in Infigo. What does a co-pilot mean? Well, it's somebody to help you make you more efficient. If you think about if you're flying an aircraft, the co-pilot sits next to you, they're giving you information, they're speeding things up, they've got your back, right? That's AI in a nutshell. But what we're going to do in the print industry is we're going to use it to make our workflows more efficient. We're going to use it to help tell us where we're generating waste, where we can save waste, where we're not using people efficient enough. And I think that's the key point, Dave, really, is not to fear it, but actually see where we can use it to help us where our pain points are. At Infigo, we're currently looking/developing something that we'll be sharing pretty soon, hopefully at Drupal. But it's fun as well. There's some fun elements that you can embrace with AI, especially with the world we live in now, where everything's instant with instant gratification. You can bring filters up, you can add things very quickly. Yep. But in essence, the message is it's a co-pilot. It's here to help us.
Yep. Kurt, thank you for the clarification on your prior comment. I'll just remind everybody, Kurt was mentioning how for some print companies, it's difficult to sell a direct mail campaign supported by omni-channel strategies. And he clarified saying, yes, it's hard to represent something you don't understand. Yes, we hear this often from sales teams out there, and just similar to what you were saying, Chris. Kurt saying it's easier for him because I come from the marketing side. Yeah, absolutely. That's a challenge.
Dave, can I just jump on that? Can I just add more to that? Because this is something we heard a lot. And Douglas, as you know well, Dave, CEO and founder of Infigo, understands the technology side, he understands the marketing side, he understands the sales side, but he also understands what the printer's trying to achieve. He took a step back and created a 4-pillar framework. And what that did, he put that framework in front of the PSP. And what that did is that took out all the anxiety and all the angst. It just literally told them what to do in terms of generating that sale once they had that system or with that piece of kit. And that's what we've got to do, is we've got to add the AI side of it into that toolkit of everything else that we're trying to offer the printer. And then once you look at it, the very black and white process, the fear goes away, and actually you're making non-emotive decisions.
Are you open to sharing that framework if folks want to
Absolutely.
get that from you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
So
Yeah.
drop your
Drop me an
email
email
in the chat there and say Infigo framework or Doug framework so that we know, and we'll follow up with you and connect you with Chris on that.
Let me send a check for $100 to
let's see who takes you up on that. I would say also that similar to the framework you're just describing there, we realize that from our perspective, helping direct mail print companies offer, omni-channel campaigns, that it's not just about having great technology, which you have to have in order to do that, but it's the training and the skills around helping the sales team be comfortable and conversant and understanding how to think about the marketing strategy beyond just being world-class at the print production. So we also have a framework. It's interesting you mentioned that. If you want to know the MindFire framework, drop that into the chat. This is the framework that we use to help print companies transform into the direct mail data-driven experts that we've been kind of alluding to. And so if you want to know that, drop that into chat. Just say MindFire framework and we'll follow up with you.
Just going right back to the first slide of this session, why are we together today?
Yeah.
The MindFire part feeds into the Infigo framework. And going back to our vision as a web-to-print supplier, it's about working as a community to get the value for the PSP. So your framework will ultimately be referenced within our framework, and without you guys or somebody like you guys, there's no point embracing that.
I know we're past our official time here, folks, I believe, but we're going to continue. We're just going to keep taking questions. Jess and Chris, you're okay? Give me a thumbs up if you're good. Keep hanging out. Okay, great.
You guys are my lunch date.
I see Kurt saying sustainability speaks to your brand and what you represent. I see my friend Jack Glacken. Jack, how are you, man?
Yeah. Hi, Jack.
Jack. People, Jack says people overestimate the speed of technology and then underestimate the effect. Wise words from Jack. I would expect nothing less. Kurt says AI can also help manage your business from HR to content for your sales team. Absolutely.
Nice.
Let's see. I see a bunch of people asking for the Infigo framework. I see that. I see that. Another comment here. If a printer is considering omni-channel marketing, they should look at everything they print. I suspect 99% of what they print could have a digital component. That's potential opportunity. Kurt, absolutely. More requests for the framework, the MindFire framework. That's good. More MindFire framework. Great synergy today. Fran, I see your comment here. I'd love the MindFire framework. It would be great to know more. We are new to the opportunities of moving to omni-channel, and it is all exciting. Fran, it is absolutely all exciting. Chris and Jess, I want to give you an opportunity to bring an observation that as we walk into Dscoop, for those of us who are going to Dscoop, what is a observation that you are making that you want to bring to this audience that you think is important for everyone to know as we move into Dscoop? Jess, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I think, you know what, I think it goes back to education, right? That's exactly why we're going to Dscoop, because it's not a trade show, it's a conference. And so what we're doing here is we're educating each other. I learned so much today from you two, but it's continuing those conversations. It's disseminating that to our industry friends. It's just having open dialogue. Obviously, sustainability is the top of my mind always, because what I think that allows you to do is, I look at the well-being part of those ESG goals. It allows you to streamline, and maximize productivity, and it frees time up for you guys to channel that energy into other meaningful work, your families, your friends, my son making me a good luck bracelet for today, right? Like those are the things that matter. And then we can maximize productivity and streamline that. It will allow us to have a better, work-life balance. So that my thing is just continued education. Yeah.
Thank you, Jess. Those are inspiring words for sure. Chris, what would you say are or is the primary observation or thing that you want folks to keep in mind as we enter this time at D-Scoop?
Yeah, so Jess has covered the first one, really. She's right, education. We all need to learn, and we need to learn from one another, especially the mistakes and the successes. Collaboration. D-Scoop is one of the best communities in the industry. There's a reason why it just grows strength to strength. There's a reason why people are excited to attend. I think if you attend a show or conference, you're looking at one of every type of the workflow. There will be somebody there with a solution to one of your problems. And if you cannot find that person, first off, ask any one of the vendors there, and they'll better point you in the direction of somebody that can help. The biggest thing I would say I've always learned is having conversations. And sometimes you just pick up one nugget, and that will change the rest of your year from talking to people. So I would say talk, integrate, collaborate, and really share your challenges, and let us try and if we don't have the answer, we'll know somebody that will.
I'm going to go back to the mental health and 4-day work week comment that you made, Chris, in a moment. But I want to read from Shelly here in the chat saying, great to listen to you all again. Thank you, Shelly, for that. Appreciate that. Continued education is key to all of us, even though some of us have been in this for the long run, I think is what you're saying, Shelly, right? Would welcome the MindFire framework. Thanks again, Shelly. No problem, Shelly. Thank you for those kind words. So, Chris, tell us more about the 4-day work week there, the experiment, and then what you've learned through that and what you're doing with it now.
Okay. So let's look back at the hours we work in the UK. And I have to use the UK because each nation has its own kind of average work week. The working week was pretty much set in the 20s, 30s, when the world was very different to what it is today. But in essence, we're all very time poor now. We all have to work a lot harder for a lot less. We're all trying to be many things to many people, whether that's dads, mums, daughters, whatever. Things are tougher, but also we have to refocus and see what our objectives are each day. And actually, the other jobs on the list, are they actually important? Will they make a difference? So we joined this framework again. It was an experiment with a number of companies in the UK, some in Norway, some across Europe, I think a couple of Japanese companies as well. And it looks at the metric per department. So ultimately, what is the main metrics that are important to a department? So let's take a support team. Let's say number of support tickets. Can you support your regular customers, and can you do it on a 4-day work week, and can you be more productive? Can the marketing team generate the same or more leads? Can the sales team generate more sales or less sales? So we trialed it for a year, and each department was monitored by a metric. And we were a little bit unlucky at the beginning because all the departments were flying. Because, if somebody says to you, your boss says to you, hey, you can have a 3-day weekend every weekend, but I need you to do this. You're going to do it. You are going to do it because you want that 3-day weekend every weekend, right? But we were a little bit unlucky in the UK because the Queen had a jubilee. So we had another national holiday. Then the Queen unfortunately died, passed away. Then we had a funeral. Then we had a coronation. So our poor support team had bank holiday after bank holiday after bank holiday. But once we got through that rocky royal patch, they started to level out and improve as well. But the irony was with the 4-day work week, Dave, we changed the working day by 30 minutes. We increased the working day by 30 minutes. Okay. But we didn't have the support team all off at the same time. It was staggered. So one person was always in. So what happened to our customers was they're now technically getting more support hours with the 4-day work week, right? So again, if you think about numbers, objectives, and what you're trying to achieve, you naturally think with your human emotion, I say 4-day work week, they're doing less work. No, and that's the problem with the mindset shift, because you're thinking that you're doing less. We're actually doing more. We work 9 till 6, but some teams are staggered. So anyway, we did it for a year. All the numbers were up, all the metrics were up. The customers didn't even notice. The only thing they noticed was certain people they couldn't book meetings with on certain days. You're never in on a Tuesday or something like that. But in essence, everyone felt happier. The HR department set up a series of surveys so people could feedback how they were feeling, and mental health improved. People were a lot happier. And yeah, we got more bang for our buck. Our meetings became more productive. We weren't meeting for the sake of meeting. People were coming to the office if it was going to be fruitful, there was going to be an outcome. And the whole mind shift changed, and output increased. And ultimately, the boss, Douglas, looked at the numbers and said, we're going to go with it.
That's
So
amazing.
let me just understand. Are you working 4 10-hour days, or
So it's 9 till
still
6, 9 till
9 to
6,
6?
4
Okay.
days a week. Yeah.
4 days a week. And
Yeah.
the pay remains the same?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Got
So
it.
let me throw another scenario at you as business owners on this session. Talent is a big issue, right?
Yes.
And again, if you think about the sustainability thing, when we talk about sustainability and the expectation of our customers now, they're younger and they've got a different mindset on how you market to them and how they want to purchase. So they are more likely to stay with a company if they're talented and not chase the money if they've got a better work-life balance. So that becomes another thing, Dave. Also, if you're then in the running to bring talent in for growth and scale, you might put yourself in the race if you offer the applicant a 4-day week. So there's so many benefits to it once you can see past the negative kind of cloud around operating a 4-day week.
Makes sense. I asked the audience if anybody else has a 4-day work week here in the United States. Let's say nobody said yes. Kurt said he's doing a 6-day work week.
Ouch.
Anybody? So there's nobody here that's on a 4-day work week. Please tell us in the chat. I see that Kurt, you have to run. He says, I'll see you at D-Scoop. Yes, folks, if you are here, we will see you at D-Scoop March 24th through March 27th. You can see that here on the screen. And you can find me, you can find Jess, Chris, and many others from our team ready and willing and able to speak to you and continue on this conversation. Are there any other questions from the audience as they're doing that? Jess, do you have anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. This was so fun. I mean, this was a really great, I enjoyed being here with all of you. I'm excited for D-Scoop. We're all going to be next to each other. So this conversation is just the first of so many more while we're there and after. So just looking forward to that.
Awesome. Chris,
Yeah.
I'll give you an opportunity to say some closing words.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to adding to our plethora of partners to really drive more value into the customers' workflow. I honestly, as I said at the beginning of this call, the more we work together, the more we can all add more value. So really excited.
Fantastic. And audience, I want to ask you, did you get value out of today's conversation? Drop a yes in the chat if you were able to get value, at least one new idea or one new insight that you think is going to be useful to you. I see Jack Lacken saying, excellent job, 5-star with 3 stars. What does that mean?
That means 8 stars.
8 stars? Okay.
I'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take it. Thank you. I see the thank yous coming in. This was great. Yes, absolutely. Yes, says Mike. Thank you, says Gretchen. Great learning. Let us know what other topics you want. We will bring the gang back together here and continue this conversation. We want to bring you value. We want to bring you insights from the leading edge of the industry, and we're committed to doing that. You guys are the 3 stars. Okay, so I think I get it now. Jess, you're a 5-star. The 2 dudes, 3 stars. Understandable. We'll take it, Jack. No problem. You okay with that, Chris?
I'm fine with it.
I
think I
What
understand.
choice do we have at this
Jack,
point?
don't forget your dancing shoes at D-Scoop, my friend. Don't forget your dancing shoes.
Oh, he'll be ready. He'll be ready. Wendy, you're welcome. Thank you. Tamar, thank you as well. Jack says, okay. All right, folks. Well, for everybody here, thank you for being with us this morning, this afternoon. I know that time is the most valuable asset any of us have, in line with what Chris was talking about with our family and our work. So thank you all for spending that valuable asset with us. And if you're headed to D-Scoop, we look forward to seeing you there. If not, and you have any questions, want to follow up on this conversation, our teams will be following up with each of you, and we'd be happy to continue the conversation there. With that, thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll see everybody soon. Thanks, Chris. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, audience.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
All righty. Ciao, everyone.
Ciao.